art school. What was your motivation for doing that?
I wanted to be in a band.
All right.
A lot of the people who I admired, the musicians, have been previous art students. I mean, John Lennon, or I can't remember if Bowie went to art school or not. Roxy Music. I mean, those kind of people who did something interesting with music tended to have that art school association.
And why did you want to be in a band? Were you?
It was the only thing I could possibly imagine doing.
Right. Well, what did
I was interested in music to a point of. I would feel, as a child, I would feel ill if I heard music I didn't like. It was like a lifeblood. It was like so important. I had although I understood absolutely nothing about how music was made, I didn't even know there was such a thing as bass guitar. I'm talking about, between 7 and 10, something like that. I would have such strong opinions about music that I think I would probably have been described as being highly pretentious. I thought that records by the Beatles and records released on Motown were amongst records which were perfect. There was nothing I could do. But there were some other ones I could definitely do with a bit of my help, right. Really, because to make them better,
Yeah.
It was the only thing I was really interested in. Unbelievably, and from a really young age, I can't tell you where that came from. My parents were not musical. There were no musical instruments in the house. My uncle gave me a Dansette record player when I was about 6 or something like that, with a pile of singles, all of which were equally terrible. But it became my companion. I had a little box room, and I used to lay on my side on the bed listening to. Because the only way I discovered it was the only way you could really kind of get anything immersive from the music is to lay quite close to the speaker. And I don't know if you to remember Dansets. They were the standard means by which people heard records. They had a very limited tone variation. It was all treble with the lid up, and you heard some bass if you put the lid down, but not a lot.
Yeah, I actually had one as a kid myself, to be honest.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what sort of band did you want to make?
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
I didn't have any particular ideas about, I didn't really understand things like musical movements. I still don't really understand things like musical movements. There was a moment during the kind of punk thing when it became evident that you could just do something. If you were kind of more or less a nobody, you could get some attention if you were any good. That was sort of the idea around it. But to be quite honest, it was just a matter of being in the right place at the right time.
When did you first become aware of punk, and which bands did you listen to?
Oh, absolutely from the beginning. Me and my mate Desmond, we had our own band, although we never played in public. And we cut our hair and started doing straight jeans in 1975. And by that point, I would read The Enemy cover to cover every weekend in the crossword. I mean, I knew absolutely everything that was going on in popular music, and punk was widely predicted before it actually happened. I mean, we used to go and see bands like the Blue Oyster Cult, who were not a punk band, but they somehow carried the energy that we were somehow looking for. And I remember when we first cut our hair short, I mean, people said we looked like convicts. It was just not, even the bank manager had hair fashionably over the collar, unfashionably by that point, over the collar. But, it was just not acceptable to have, really short hair. And, just sort of the whole... So, I was really aware from it right from the beginning. We saw the Sex Pistols about, 5 or 6 times in 1976. They were kind of a generational divide. Either you were into them or you were old, basically.
Yeah. Do you think music at the time needed a bit of a shake-up?
I kind of understood the general thinking behind it. I never really had that. I would never subscribe to the Year Zero thing. I always thought it was a bit of shit there. And I didn't understand, how like a new bit of music coming along would make other bits of music that were older less relevant.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
I wasn't much interested in the sort of latter part of prog, but I was a mad King Crimson fan from the, in the early part of the 70s, and I kind of knew, I had almost, by the mid-70s, I had an almost encyclopedic knowledge of popular music, I sort of really understood what everything was, and how it fitted.
How did the band...
That was in the days when you could know.
Yeah.
The sheer quantity now is just too much for anybody to be encyclopedic.
I've tried myself, for the book. It's hard, isn't it? So how did the band come together?
I can only give you my story into it. I was living with a girl in North London. I mean, it was quite an ideal situation because she was a friend of my best friend Desmond, and they shared an apartment, and I moved in with her, so I had my girlfriend and my best friend in the same house. And, it was a sort of idyllic, we spent an idyllic year kind of just having fun and just being kind of young and all the rest of it. And then she decided she'd had enough of me,
right.
And had the conversation about, can't we just be friends?
Yeah.
Which if you're on the receiving end of that means, someone made you out in your ear. So I had to move out fast. I was at that point at college in Watford on an illustration course, and I just thought, well, I'll have to move to Watford because that's the only thing. And I had some friends who I was on the course with, and we just rented a house together, and it was kind of weird because I think almost the first weekend I was there, I went to a party, and somebody said, we're putting together a band for the end of term. Do you want to be in it? Have you got anything to us? I said, yeah. I was full of swagger. I can sing, I can play the guitar. And that turned into something called Overload, the nucleus of which was Bruce Gilbert, a guy called George Gill, and myself. And that did one gig without a drummer. And it was rubbish. We were playing George Gill's songs, which I never liked much. But Bruce was quite a bit older than me. And during that summer, where all those things were happening, Desmond used to come up, and we used to play him music. And it was like he was really paying a lot of attention because we were like the next generation. We were saying, no, you should be listening to this, and you should be listening to this, and you should be listening to this. And I think it changed. It was the first time in my life I'd ever had someone who was kind of older than me and quite impressive. I mean, Bruce was impressive. Take notice of what I had to say.
Yeah.
And I gave the general sense that if we were going on with this, we needed to kind of go in a different direction. I can't remember if I didn't really set it up. I wasn't trying like in charge in any way. But it was the three of us, 3 guitars and 1 voice through 1 amp in my bedroom in North Watford, playing basically, 1 chord, kind of long drones, and it felt like that was more interesting than what had been before, which was kind of George's songs.
Yeah. And
that was what developed into Wire. And, the classic thing. I mean, Bruce said he knew a bass player, and I said I knew a drummer. And suddenly we had a band. We were 5-piece. And it was still formal stuff was still George's songs. And this is quite a famous story. George broke his leg while trying to steal an amp at somebody's gig, and ended up in hospital. And classically, like bands do, we just started rehearsing without him and realised that even playing his songs without him in it, we sounded better than before. And by the time he came back from hospital, we'd already mentally ejected him from the band. I mean, it was another couple of months before we actually kicked him out. But and it was like basically the ever practical me saying, well, you can't continue to play George's songs if he's not in the band. We better write some of our own. Graham said he can write text. I said I can write tunes, and that was basically how it got to be the band that made Pink Flag.
Right.
And that had all happened. Our first gig as a four-piece was on the 1st of April 1977. By September 77, we recorded Pink Flag. So it all happened pretty fast.
So when you were writing the songs, so Graham was writing most of the lyrics. How precious was he about the lyrics, and did you have a bit of leeway in changing them or moving? I
think it was more. It seems like I've realised in latter stages that I'm quite good at stuffing words in willy-nilly into whatever structure I've decided it's going to be.
Right.
So I think taking liberties, but not necessarily changing the words. Just saying, here's an arbitrary bit. Well, I've got to here, and this is where the chorus should be, so that will be the chorus.
Right, yeah.
Without anyone having said, this is the chorus. And I think I was really conscious when I started seriously writing for a while that I didn't want it to be. I've always not been very excited by rock and roll. The sort of the three chords, sort of blues progression, just seemed to me to be overdone.
Yeah.
Band had done it a billion times. Why would I be repeating that?
Yeah.
So I tried to do kind of tricks with it. So I mean, you have like Pink Flag. It's just two chords. There's one chord and another chord which is exactly the wrong chord.
Right.
I mean, there's those kind of devices, and also using influences from music which was not considered cool. Like, by 1977, there was already this whole kind of litany of things that you were supposed to be if you were punk, which started to sound stupid. It's like, why create a straitjacket for yourself, So I personally didn't care. I mean, Lowdown was the first time. It's a really early wire piece, and it was meant to be slow because punk all had to be fast.
Pay attention. We're wire. Is too short, but never too long to reject the image. Will in time become a concrete dream. Another cigarette, another day, from A to B, again avoiding CD and E. The Z, where you play the blues. Avoiding a death to win the game, to avoid relegation, the big game. Running in the big slip, rising to the surface. That's better of you. slow down. So low down.
Is it vicious in tonight?
Problem here with the monitor.
So, like, yeah, it'd be good to have something that's really, really slow. And, yeah, I mean, just taking musical forms and warping them and just having fun with it, really, as a thing. And then, you know, a band with fairly limited skills being able to kind of pull it off, because the thing that you can do, even if you're not great players, is play ensemble. It's something which I didn't really understand. It just became obvious after a while that it's not about how brilliant all the musicians are. It's about whether they can play together or not.
Yeah, I see.
So yeah, that's the kind of that's kind of the frame of it, and you know, as I say, the rest is history.
Yeah. So having written a song, how much would it change before it was ready for the album, do you think, or to be released on single?
I tend to write, because I'm a rhythm guitarist, basically. So I tend, the rhythm is inbuilt. Sometimes I would say somewhere between 60 to 80% of the time, the rhythm and the tempo actually come from what I've originally written.
Yeah.
And the structure, I mean, really, there isn't anybody who knows how to structure a piece of music the way I know. I do know how to structure a piece of music, you know. I mean, I have some kind of issues with some kinds of formal structure, so I can play around with that, but really, honestly, it's not, I've never ever told anybody what to play, so you interpret, you know, if I'm providing a rhythm, then the other instruments should come off of that rhythm, but they don't need to do the same as what I do. They don't. You know, I'll tell people what the chords are. You know.
Yeah.
It's up to them what they play, work out their parts. You know, accordingly, and it always seems to have worked as a very basic kind of scheme of doing things.
Right. Well, you first got a lot of notice when you were included on the Roxy London WC2 live album. So what happened after that?
What happened? Well, that album was actually recorded by a mobile, and the recordings were licensed by EMI. Oh, right, okay. And the album was actually, the person sitting recording it was Mike Thorne.
Ah, right.
So, yeah, I mean, they need to say those things, and it's really obvious. Like those songs function as like a first set of demos.
Yeah.
Mike was pretty keen right from the off he was not only producing records for EMI, he was also in the A&R department. He wanted to sign us, I think, almost from the beginning. He just thought that we had a lot of potential. And, you know, it just kind of went on from there, really. I mean, we had to do sets of demos. It was very formal. EMI wouldn't, put up the money for a record unless they had all of the material that you were going to record had been demoed and they could sort of approve it.
Yeah.
And it was all a bit, whatever, but still, I mean, that was the way it was done.
Yeah. Well, he was the producer on Pink Flag as well, wasn't he?
He produced the first 3 albums.
Yeah, yeah. And he contributed instruments, didn't he, to pretty much all of them?
He played keyboards on all of the records. You don't really hear it much on Pink Flag. You hear it much more in Cheers Missing 154.
Yeah. Did he have any influence over the actual songwriting?
No.
No? Okay. So as the albums progressed, you got more experimental and a bit more ambitious. What do you think the big difference was between the first 2 albums?
I think it's when we were recording Pink Flag, we definitely felt that we were kind of like the next thing after punk.
Yeah.
It still had elements of punk in it. And by the time we got to Chairs Missing, British punk anyway was well and truly over. It was starting to become, the whole thing around the Pistols had become kind of a comedy.
Yeah.
Sort of circus, I mean, it was intended, but still, it wasn't really. I mean, we were, for all our differences and all our funny ideas about stuff, we were genuinely more interested in the music, trying to do good music. So the idea that we could progress, we grew up through an age of musical progression.
Yeah.
So the idea that the second album would be different to the first was not weird. It was not that weird. I mean, we have been told that it was a rapid progression and all the rest of it. But you think about back to the days of the '60s. You have mod bands who suddenly became hippie bands. And it was just what you did. You moved on.
How much freedom did the record company give you? Could you just, did you have a free reign?
We just did what the fuck we wanted.
Right.
I don't think, to be quite honest, someone might have tried to say something, but I don't think anyone took any notice of anything ever. I mean, Mike Thorne came into the beginning of the sessions for 154 and said, I've just been in a meeting and they would like the album to be a series of singles.
Right.
And everybody just looked at it blankly. It's like, well, there's some singles on it, but the album is not a bunch of singles. That was the end of the discussion. It's gone with making a record.
So the band took a bit of a break, didn't they, around about 81? Was that did you just need a break from each other just for a little while and maybe just recharge your batteries?
There were technical things. I mean, that's a bit of a complex story.
Yeah.
And certainly in the 5 minutes I have remaining, I don't think we'll be able to really do it justice. I mean, there's books about this stuff, but I mean, it was the internal politics of all bands can be difficult. I mean, Wire is sometimes particularly gruesome.
Yeah.
In terms of the way that people see things and the kind of differing attitudes. And I would say the simple way to sum it up is if there are more reasons for doing it than not doing it, then it goes on. And if there are more reasons for not doing it than doing it, then it stops.
Right. Okay. I'll try and be brief because I know you got a time limit. So low price synthesizers and sequencers were starting to come out. Were you experimenting with these at all? And I know the Ideal Copy album that's been sort of cited as.
Oh, by the 80s, yeah. I came to the Ideal Copy. I was already working with sequencing. Yeah.
Yeah. How easy did you find working with the early synths?
Not so much the synths, but the sequencing. Sequencing was kind of a revelation.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened was that you went from. I worked at that point with it's all Steinberg stuff, and they had Pro 16 and Pro 24, which were pattern based.
Yeah.
And it was basically like programming a drum machine.
Yeah.
And they brought out in 1990. I think it was 1990. They brought out Cubase. And Cubase was a revelation because it was like a tape machine. It was the first time anyone looked at music making in that time-based way. There were tracks. There were, you could see where something was coming in and where it was going out. I I work on Pro Tools now, and it's audio rather than MIDI, but it's exactly the same thing. It's like you're looking at tracks. It's like being able to look at a tape machine and actually see what's on the tracks.
Yeah.
It's ancient technology in a way, because it's exactly how studio engineers will understand music, and it's so easy for musicians to pick up on that. They understand about bars. They understand, when it comes in on bar 9, all that stuff. It's all basic.
You approach music now is different to at the beginning. What have you learnt over the years that you've picked up?
It really depends what it is. Songwriting is songwriting is songwriting. You can write a song on guitar, but then I also make music which is electronic and abstract, and I collaborate with different people, especially Malcolm, my wife and partner. It's the same and it's different.
Right, yeah, I understand. Do you think you'll ever retire?
What for?
Yeah, good point.
It's not. I run all of the business around Wire. Wire now owns a considerable amount of its catalogue, and that provides a fairly. It's not life-changing amounts of money, but that's an income.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to. There's nothing that I have to do in order to keep body and soul together.
Yeah.
There is obviously organising releases and stuff like that, but it's not so. I regard that I'm in a very privileged position.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great interview. Thank you so much for that, Colin. It's been really nice to talk to you.
Oh, thank you. Good luck with the book.
Thank you, mate. Thanks again, mate. Good luck for the next interview.
All right, cheers, mate.
You take care, mate. Talk to you.
All right, cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.